The US has a GDP of $27 trillion, but we can't have a government website that doesn't lag, crash, or just look horrible. Why? You're telling me we couldn't have used like a few $100,000 of that $1 trillion to hire some proficient UX designers? Well, as with anything, it's not that simple, and there's a very harsh truth to all this. The reason government websites look so bad is actually our fault. To understand why it's your fault that government websites are so slow, we gotta understand the government itself. Government websites are the unfortunate victim of, well, the government and us, but more on that later. Unlike private companies where competition pressures them to innovate and the board of directors that can undo all of that progress by robbing their logo of any personality whatsoever, in the government, every decision, every change must pass through layers of approval, scrutiny, and regulation. These layers are meant to ensure accountability and compliance, but they also completely cripple the speed of any progress. A tech company could change anything in a snap of a finger if it's blessed by the CEO, but when the president tries to do anything, he has to get through Congress first. And that's exactly how changing these websites are too. Gotta get it through Congress before anything actually happens. Most of this Congress, though, are just a bunch of regulatory frameworks, like Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, which mandates that government websites be accessible to individuals with disabilities. These regulations are critical to ensuring inclusivity and accessibility, but then instead of putting it into practice, we gotta debate about whether or not it works, whether or not it can work better, etc., until the entire thing is pretty much filibustered into oblivion, kinda like the actual Congress. Also, remember how I mentioned that competition pressures private companies to innovate? Well, what competition is there to the government? If you don't like the DMV website, what are you gonna do? Go to a competitor's DMV website? Yeah, that just doesn't exist. And it's because they don't have to attract users in the way businesses do that means that there's really no urgency for the government to modernize anything. There's no consequences for failing to keep up with modern design and functionality standards, so who cares? Besides everyone trying to use the damn website. But bureaucracy alone doesn't explain the full story, because sometimes the government really does want to improve its systems, but it literally just can't, because some of us just aren't capable to change that way. Speaking of, thanks so much for all the support on the channel lately. It really means a lot, and I want to give something back to you guys. So do you need a job? That sounded a bit weird. But whether you're a UX designer, app developer, freelancer, or just a curious viewer, I want to get to know you guys, share some UX and UI tips, and maybe even get a gig. So I made a Discord channel for us and want to make this the place to be for front-end professionals. And I'm having talks with people to get some employers in there so you can connect with them too and find some jobs in the future. I'm really excited to get this thing started, so I hope you'll join me. One of the most significant barriers to modernizing government websites is the outdated technology they run on. Many government websites rely on legacy systems, old software and infrastructure that were cutting edge decades ago, but are now far behind the times. These systems, some of which are over 30 years old, are deeply embedded into government operations. Think of it as trying to build a modern skyscraper on the foundation of a crumbling 19th century building. Eventually, the cracks show. In fact, estimates suggest that up to 80% of the federal government's IT budget goes toward maintaining these aging systems. This includes everything from outdated coding languages like COBOL to ancient hardware systems that still process vital tasks like Social Security benefits and tax filings. Even finding engineers who can maintain these old systems has become a challenge, as the number of developers familiar with these technologies has dwindled over time, and it's easier to just slap on some HTML fixes than port everything over into the modern era. Replacing these systems isn't just expensive, it's risky. Government agencies handle massive amounts of sensitive data and are responsible for critical services like healthcare and unemployment benefits. Yeah, it'd suck if Gmail crashed, but you can go a day without looking at your email. Now imagine if the IRS tax filing system shut down. For legal reasons, I'm gonna have to say that would suck. A major system overhaul includes the possibility of downtime or glitches that could disrupt these major government services, leading to public frustration and political fallout. For many agencies, it feels safer to patch up an old system than to risk a total failure by introducing something new. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. In fact, let's take a look at the IRS again. Despite being responsible for processing trillions of dollars in tax revenue each year, the IRS still uses systems that date back to the 1960s. business. These systems are incredibly slow and prone to crashes, typical for a program that's almost 70 years old, especially during tax season when millions of Americans file their returns at the same time. Yet replacing these systems would require billions of dollars and years of development and would probably cause a ton of bugs. So why in the world would I ever want to touch that then? But okay, look, let's say the government did say that it wanted to update a website, and now they want to do it. Where exactly does all that money come from? Our taxes is a deceptively simple yet incorrect answer to the question. Every government has a limited budget, and that budget has to be spread across a wide array of services: healthcare, education, national defense, infrastructure, and public safety, to name a few. As you can imagine, the prettiness of the Department of State website is probably less important than a new fighter jet. And the fighter jet's cooler, so I can't really blame them. Politicians often prefer to fund projects that are visible to the public, like new roads, bridges, or schools, things that can be showcased during an election campaign, and if not, something that would project the country's power onto the world, guns, girls, or whatever. Website upgrades, on the other hand, are largely invisible and don't offer the same immediate political benefits. One clear example of the government actually trying to make a new website is the healthcare.gov website, which crashed repeatedly during its launch in 2013 due to a lack of proper investment in its infrastructure. Despite years of planning and millions of dollars spent, the website wasn't prepared to handle the surge of traffic it received when the Affordable Care Act went live. This kind of failure is not just embarrassing, it erodes public trust in the government's ability to provide essential services online. And we already don't really trust the government, so even benign mistakes like this could backfire spectacularly. So we ask again, why would I do something like that? Besides, everyone thinks they know the best UX and UI solution out there, and if only the government would just do X, Y, or Z, that everything would be better. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Designing a search engine for a gazillion people is easy. Slap the search bar in the middle, name yourself after a pair of swimming gear, and bam, $1 billion. Designing a government website, which displays legal information, filing systems, search bars, up-to-date news, and everything else for everyone from a broke teenager trying to apply for FAFSA to their grandma who can't comprehend why anyone would even need government aid for college because isn't college like $500 a semester, sweetie? We have that money, is a completely different beast. Unlike private companies that can target a specific user base, government websites have to serve everyone. This wide range of users means that sites often end up overcomplicating things in an attempt to cater to all skill levels. And the first thing anyone who's ever been taught UX and UI design knows is that trying to cater to everyone is almost always a complete disaster. Take, for example, the challenge of making government websites accessible to people with disabilities per Section 508. It's obviously important that accessibility exists, but it means that the designers need to ensure that these sites are compatible with screen readers, voice commands, and other assistive technologies, which means jamming all of it into one and just confusing everyone involved. A study by the Pew Research Center found that many government websites have poor usability ratings, with users frequently reporting difficulty finding basic information. Along with this, there's the issue that government websites often contain everything. Many of these sites serve as portals for multiple services, from renewing a driver's license to filing taxes, applying for permits, or even enrolling in healthcare. Trying to cram all these services into a single, unified interface often leads to overcrowded designs and confusing navigation paths. In contrast, private companies can streamline their websites by focusing on one or two primary functions, on a few target profiles, and use those to make an easier-to-navigate website. New UX is cool and all, but in the light of all this, it's often better to just leave it be. On top of that, if for whatever reason a UX or UI revamp completely breaks the website, now everyone has to call, or God forbid, go to the DMV instead of doing everything online, and we all know we don't want that. But okay, let's say we have the money, we have the budget, and we have a relatively agreed upon idea on how a government website should be redesigned. Now we gotta remember who actually runs the government: politicians. In addition to technical and financial constraints, politics plays a huge role in the outdated nature of government websites. Behind every government project is a complex web of political interests, with different departments and agencies vying for control over funding, design decisions, and priorities. Updating a government website isn't just a technical decision, it's a political one. Often, multiple government agencies are involved in managing a single website, each with its own set of goals and requirements. This can lead to turf wars, where different departments fight for control over the direction of the website, causing delays and inefficiencies. Moreover, changes in political leadership can result in abrupt shifts in priorities. A new administration might scrap digital transformation plans initiated by the previous government, or reallocate funding away from digital projects to other areas deemed more pressing. A prime example of how politics can disrupt digital projects is the UK's Government Digital Service Overhaul. Launched with a great promise, the program aimed to create a centralized, user-friendly platform for all government services. However, frequent changes in leadership and shifting political priorities led to the project being scaled back significantly, leaving many of its goals unfulfilled. In many cases, political cycles don't align with the long-term nature of IT projects anyways. Politicians want quick wins they can showcase during their time in office, but overhauling a government website is a multi-year endeavor that may not bear fruit until long after they've left office. We all complain about how outdated government websites are, but you wouldn't re-vote for a president who says, "I finally fixed the god-awful Supreme Court website." As a result, many digital transformation projects are abandoned or half-finished, leaving government websites perpetually outdated. But despite all of this, though, there's been slow progress, with one country even porting their whole government onto the internet. Estonia was and is probably the only country in the world to have an e-government, and has one of the world's most advanced government interfaces on the planet, offering secure, seamless online services for everything from voting to healthcare. By embracing digital-first policies, Estonia has proven that a modern, user-friendly government website is not only possible, but can also save time and money. But even in the United States, there are several initiatives aimed at modernizing government digital infrastructure. Programs like the U.S. Digital Service, or USDS, and the Presidential Innovation Fellows are bringing tech experts from the private sector into government to help tackle outdated systems and improve user experience. These teams work to address critical challenges, from fixing healthcare.gov to improving the Veterans Affairs website. So I guess we'll just have to see if any of it works. Unfortunately, though, if we want better government websites, we gotta view websites differently. They're not just pages. They're critical design infrastructure that is vital to public service. Investments in modern technology, agile development practices, and cybersecurity are essential if governments are to keep up with the growing demands of their citizens. So the next time you find yourself frustrated with a slow, clunky government website, remember, it's not just about because we couldn't afford any UX designers. It's because of the bureaucratic inertia to outdated technology, budgetary constraints, and political roadblocks that make updating these websites so painful. So I guess in the end, give the web designers a break and blame the politicians instead, like we do for anything else. Thanks for watching.